Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and gentlemen, welcome to the greatest show on earth, the show that has been called The Alternative to the Alternative News, given that title years ago because we go just a little bit farther, maybe a lot farther than the mainstream, of course, a lot farther than most of the alternative news that's filled with a bunch of garbage. Nobody's getting to the bottom of things anymore, are we? We're just taking what we hear and believing it without doing any research. It's an American phenomenon. Greg Anthony here, the Investigative Journal. And with that in mind, we're going to talk about things that you need to look deeper at on the surface. Don't believe what you hear. And let's just make it easy. We're going to start off with the Trump phenomena because it's in the news every day and it's right here for you to see. Then we're going to go back and look at Jesus of Nazareth, okay? And I've always wondered about that because I grew up as a Catholic, and nobody really looks deeply into his life. You know, we get the story, a few words he says in the Bible, but who was he really? And I like to look at that today because there's a lot more to it. We're going to use two sources. One is a Spanish journalist writer named Juan Jose Benitez, J.J. Benitez, who wrote a number of really controversial books, 9 total, started in the 1980s, and it's probably books that American English readers don't get. Then we're going to look at a book that talks about Gamaliel's interview with Joseph and Mary and others concerning Jesus. I've talked about this before, but it's quite interesting because I thought about it and I said, you know, the Romans were meticulous in their record keeping. They should have records about who this Messiah was, and they should have been out searching for him when he was a young boy, right? And I think they did. We're just not given that information. Then, of course, I want to look at the founding fathers of America. And it may take a few shows. We're going to go through all these stories and showing you that you need to look a little more deeply at what you're told. And we're going to go back to some of the writings of Manly P. Hall. He's a Masonic writer in his book, Secret Teachings of All Ages, and give you a couple clues about why I think America was formed for another purpose. Yep, we're going to do all that really quickly because that's the way America is, right? Got to get it done right away, right away. But anyway, let's talk about this Trump phenomenon and make it easy. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time because you can figure this out quite easy. Now, most people are going to think that the left, Democrat, socialist liberals are fighting tooth and nail against conservative Trump and conservative America. You're seeing it on all fronts. You're seeing a collision between these two groups. And most people are going to think that you either got to join one or the other, pick your side, and then fight to save America. Now, on the left or on the liberal side, you see basically a group of globalists. Right. They don't like anything American anymore. They don't like capitalism. They don't like our history. They don't want to even allow people to be boys and girls anymore. They want to change the sexes. And they're going to do this through this idea that, you know, they know more than you do. And you need to join this global phenomenon, these great liberal progressive socialists that are represented in Hollywood and are represented in Congress now with a number of these young upstart Congress people, or Tasio, or, you know, OAC they call her. You really have made it when you're known as initials and you don't have to use their names. What would they call me? GAS. Gas. Yeah, that you can call me Gas. That's my initials, right? That's an easy one. he's full of gas. He's got a lot of gas. So anyway, I prefer to go by Greg Anthony, the investigative journal. But anyway, you want to call me Gas? Go right ahead. But anyway, so we got the globalists. Now, if you want to be on that side, go right ahead. Then there's the other side, conservative America. There is people who believe in the red, white, and blue. There are people who believe that America should be a sovereign nation. They believe in borders. The globalists, they want to open all the borders, right? Everything is free. Everybody come in. You know, the whole world will be all together and sing Kumbaya together, just like the Pope says with all the religious groups now, the ecumenical movement. So anyway, there's a lot of similarities between the Vatican ecumenical movement and the globalists, right? Now, we're talking about the conservatives. So the conservatives are over there saying, no, we don't want abortion anymore. And, you know, we believe in the right to life. We believe in closed borders. We believe in bringing people into America on merit, not on the way we do it now in this crazy immigration program we have. We like people, but we've got to control it. And, you know, if you want to join that group, you become a right-wing conservative, hated by places like Facebook, hated by Amazon, hated by Twitter. You know, you'll find a lot of your stuff is going to be censored through algorithms, right? And so you want to join one or the other, right? And that's as far as people go. Then they fight like tooth and nail and nothing gets done. Now go into Congress because they're divided into two groups too. We have the same globalists and the conservatives. And they don't get anything done. And their latest little game they play is Trump and Russia collusion that you've been hearing about for 2.5, 3 years. And if you haven't heard about it, then you live on a different planet if you're from America, or you just don't care. So we've had this story, this drum beating that Trump has been involved with the Russians. He's a bad dude. He should not be president, and the globalists are going to get rid of him one way or the other. And that's what they've been trying to do. And you've heard about Robert Mueller and the Mueller report, which found, you know, after, 2.5 years, they had like $40 million. There have been 500 witnesses. There have been subpoenas and 1 million documents given by the Trump administration to him. And they found no Russian collusion whatsoever. However, in the meantime, a number of Americans were really harassed and put in jail for crimes that had nothing to do with Russia, but were found out when they started investigating a non-crime. There was no crime. So most people, and we know what happened, so Mueller came out with his report. Now the Democrats want to impeach Trump. And you hear on both sides this fighting. Now the globalists say that Trump is committed crimes. They can't tell you the crimes he committed because he didn't commit any, and he's covering everything up now. Well, he gave everything to them. He didn't do anything. He didn't cite executive privilege one time during Mueller's investigation. He gave over all documents. He allowed everybody in his cabinet to go and testify, even his personal attorneys, which no president in the past has done that. No president at all has done that. And they still criticize the guy. So you got really this fight going on. And you're either like Robert De Niro on the left saying he wants to punch out Trump, or you're on the right like Rudy Giuliani stating, the legal situation here. And this is really insane what they're doing, because they're showing you there's really no rule of law. And I'm spending a little time on this because you need to hear this. Now, in Mueller's report, they were looking for Russian collusion. Well, they found none. And in his first 200 and some pages, they came out and said, no, there was no collusion. A prosecutor's role, that's what he was, working for the Justice Department, not Congress. A prosecutor's role is either thumbs up or thumbs down. If thumbs up, you can say he can be indicted, right? You got a crime that the prosecutor says there's probable cause that this occurred. Then they can go to the next step. Now, they also looked into obstruction of justice by the President of the United States. And guess what Mueller does with this one? He doesn't give a thumbs up or thumbs down. He starts saying there were 10 instances where Trump did this and this and this, but I can't find any obstruction. But I'm not saying he's exonerated. Now, this is a total travesty. Injustice. A prosecutor can't do that. You don't exonerate anybody as a prosecutor. All you do is say there was enough evidence to find obstruction, or there wasn't enough evidence, but he didn't do that. He gets up in front of the American people the other day for 8 minutes and starts giving this cockamamie idea that he didn't exonerate him, and we don't know, so he turned it over to the Attorney General, who said there was no obstruction, but that wasn't good enough. The Congress said, Mueller has left it to us. Well, the executive branch does not do Congress's investigation into what? For 3 years, you've heard the left, the progressive globalists, say that Trump is a criminal. He's a traitor. He should be put in jail. He's like Hitler. He's like Pol Pot. He's the worst of the worst. But when you really look at it, they're talking about themselves and Obama, who was actually doing all those things. And it's insane. But anyway, you're getting this fight. So Americans who believe in the conservative movement are being made to look like fools. In a sense, Trump standing up for himself and saying, hey, you're a never Trumper, Mueller. You're a never Trumper. Blah, blah, blah. You hate Donald Trump. So you got this fight going on. So you're either going to join the left or you're going to join the right and then fight and nothing gets done. And they do the same thing in Washington. So if you want to do that, that's what you're told. Go right ahead. But this show is giving you another alternative. Think of it this way. Let me check the time here. Because when I start talking, sometimes I ramble on. And it's only 12 minutes into this segment, so we got time. Time. So anyway, this show is going to give you another way to look at it. We're going to start out by stating that the globalists and the conservatives in Washington, D.C., the top dogs in the Masonic lodges, the top dogs in the Vatican and the Jesuit order, all are working together for a common cause. And that cause is a one-world government, a one-world order, and a globalist society. So you say to yourself, well, that's not what Trump says. That's not what, Congressman, what's his name, or Lindsey Graham, the senator, says. That's not what the congressmen and the Republicans, they're fighting for us. But think of it this way. Don't believe a word of it. That's for public consumption. Now, on the other side, you say, well, if I'm a globalist, I want freedom. I want to have everything. I think we should be together with all people and make a better world. Don't believe them. Because together, they're working their game called the Hegelian Dialectic, where the left and the right appear to be fighting each other on the surface, telling you one story and the other telling you the other. This goes for the mainstream broadcasters on either the left or the right as well. They know. Like Rush Limbaugh, he knows. I think the top dogs at CNN know. And they know who their boss really is. And that comes right from Rome. You hear what I said? Rome. The Pope. The Jesuits. This has been going on for years. And we're giving you another alternative here. So, look at it this way. They play that game, 99% of the people believe it, and they join forces on either one side or the other. They fight. But in the end, what's going to happen? Well, if you really want to know, no matter if you're a conservative or a globalist, you're going to get your way because they are working together for a global, one-world, fascist system. And this is how they bring it about. You hear the rumblings of socialism from the left. You see this beautiful world they're creating for you. Don't believe it. It's going to be you in chains. You, a slave. The more power they get, the more the less freedom you have. And now you say, well, Trump can't be doing that. Well, yes, he can. Because this is how they get their way. They figure out, they put the American people who want a conservative world, who want a normal world where you got borders, where you got countries that really look out for the people. And you bring them up against the globalists, and you'll find out there's going to be no match. You're seeing it right from the top of the justice system, where you're seeing Hillary Clinton and the globalists in the public eye getting away with all these crimes, while you're seeing the globalists bring Trump down without committing any crimes. And people go, well, how can that be? The world isn't fair. Well, it isn't, and they're showing it to you. And they're destroying the rule of law right before your eyes, with the example I gave you about how they don't even adhere to the prosecutor. The top guys don't even adhere to what a first-year law student knows as probable cause. Yes, you can learn that in the first year of law school, and you start to understand that you can't just put out a 200-page report and not, as a prosecutor, come up, thumbs up, or thumbs down. It just ain't the way it goes, but they do it. And so you see, they're saying to you, conservatives, America is done. And they're doing the same thing in the press. You look at all the lies that they're spewing out. And you really know, even if you don't like Donald Trump and his group, you got to say, wow, it doesn't make sense what they're doing. But they're shoving it in your face. There is no freedom of speech anymore. There is no government. Basically, the press, the mainstream press, that includes the New York Times and the Washington Post and all these CNN and the rest of these people, they're basically working for the Democratic Party, the socialist, Democrat, globalists. That's who they are. There's no freedom there. Then you have the conservative press who are sticking up for Trump. And you're seeing that they get, the only voice you hear there is some people on Fox News. And boy, if you don't listen to that, you're never going to hear that story. You'll think Trump is the worst thing that ever existed. And that's what they want. And Trump was picked to do that, play that part. It's theater. It's theatrical. It's a script that's written behind the scenes in that tunnel between Georgetown, Jesuit University, and the White House, where they get together. They had slated Bush to be the president for 9/11. Then they put Obama in there to destroy America, to take down the military, to give $150 billion to Iran, to do all those crazy things overseas, to diminish American popularity, to diminish American freedom, strength. And he was doing it through apologizing to the world that America has committed so many sins. And Obama's there. Then they quickly shift over to Trump, who's doing the exact opposite. And I call it the last fight for freedom, and they won it this way. They picked Trump years ago to be president. And even they told you on it was in 2000, I believe, The Simpsons showed you Trump coming down that escalator that he came down when he ran for president. The exact same suit, tie, everything. Exact same hand gestures. So they told you, this has been a game, this is a theater. So what we're telling you on this show is, please don't fall into either category of left and right. You have to understand that both of them are doing this as a game. That's why you're seeing such ludicrous stuff being said, done in all aspects of life and the political world. When you turn on your tube to listen to the news, whether it be the left wing or the right wing. Now, how do you deal with it? Of course, you have feelings. Of course, you would say, well, if in a real world, if this wasn't the case, who would you rather be on? Me? I would rather be a conservative. Just like I hear on the right wing. And then you may be a globalist and say, I want to be that. But remember this, those feelings you have are in a perfect world if it was really true. But that is a game they're playing, so you have to divorce yourself from it, look above and oversee it and understand that you now know the game that's being played against you. So the obvious question is, what do? You tell everybody you can. You get out there. No matter if Twitter, no matter if Facebook, no matter if all of these outlets, YouTube, are censoring you or cutting down your voice, the voice will be heard. The voice in the wilderness is important. And you've heard it right here. You have no excuse now not to research just what I said. And go deep. Go into the political side of it. Go into the side of it of the legal side. Go into it from the freedom of the press, which doesn't exist. So there's three important areas that they are showing you what is coming in the future. So you know this is a game. You know that OIC, Ocasio-Cortez, is a Jesuit shill put there to now claim that millions of Americans want socialism. And who decided that? Who created socialism and communism to begin with? There's another subject. Don't believe it. Don't believe it was Stalin, Lenin, and Marx and all these people. Of course they were there, the front man, but the Jesuits in the 1600s masterminded socialism and communism in the Paraguay reductions. Read about it. Then you'll know that what I tell you is what you got to start thinking about and doing more research and more research. And so that's going to lead us to our next subject. And let's go in reverse order. Let's talk about the foundations of this country, what it was really founded about and for, and not what you hear in your history books in college or high school. Very interesting stuff. And we're going to do that in the next half hour because I'm running out of time here. I only got 2 minutes. And so what I'm getting at here, you got to listen to this. The American system of history teaches you that there was just this struggle over taxes between the British and the colonists. And the reason that we're here is because Britain was taxing us to death, and the Tea Party, Boston Tea Party, right? That's it. Just us against Britain. False. That was a front. In fact, the taxes are so much higher now, we should do the same thing to American government. Our taxes are huge. They were talking about 3 to 4% taxes back then. Now what are they, 50? I mean, the Socialists and the Democratic Party are saying they want 70% taxes. Now, why don't we overthrow them? Where's the Boston Tea Party? Where's the Patriots? Well, they want to take your guns away. Because this is if that's the standard of revolution, then 3% tax doesn't appear to be as bad as 70, does it? So that should give you guys an idea. Let's put on let's go after the redcoats who are now in Washington, all of them. But that's really the truth, because that's not what it was all about to begin with. Oh, sure, they used that idea, and they teach that in your history books, but that's not really what went on behind the scenes. And many of my shows over the years have talked about this, relating the Jesuits, relating how the Vatican was instrumental and the Jesuits were instrumental in fomenting and strategizing and masterminding the American Revolution, and how they used Franklin and others who were their loyal shills to create the supposed new world, freedom. But they did it for another reason. And you can get it from their own words. And that's what we're going to do today. Really quickly, I'm not going to go through a huge history lesson. You can go back to some of my old shows. But we can just take the words of Manly P. Hall and a couple other people and see that there is a reason for this country that's far beyond just what you read in your history books. And we're going to do that right after the break. You're so lucky to get the greatest show on earth here on the Investigative Journal. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal, glad you're with us. If you want to go to my website, it's at Greg Anthony's Journal, greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. You can get shows going way back. And I was checking my site. I was having somebody help me put down my shows, but there's a lot of shows missing, and I'm going to try to get to the bottom of that. And because I switched over from my long-standing website, the Arctic Beacon, and tried to use this blog to get with it a little bit. But there's a lot of shows missing, but you can still get hundreds, thousands of shows. But I'm going to try to recover the rest of them, and I think they're somewhere. I think Nicholas from the radio station has them somewhere, and I think it's just too much work to ask him to do that, so I'm going to try to put them up myself. I'm going to talk to him. But anyway, one last thing about getting you off this idea that there really is a true conservative and progressive party in Washington that are, dueling it out and believe in what they're doing. They're all working for a different cause. And one great example is 9/11. Okay, I researched it for a couple of years, and I can say beyond a reasonable doubt, almost assuredly, 99.9 or 100%, that it was an inside job. The story, the government story they give you is it's like a piece of Swiss cheese, so full of holes, you can't believe it. But still, both the Democrats and the Republicans believe that the government had nothing to do with 9/11. They can't. They all work together. They can't differ on that story. And the people that do are crazy, right? They're just lunatics out there. But no. It's just the opposite. This story shows you they work together. they do things like this. All of a sudden, you'll hear about the Antarctica Treaty, and you wonder why, if all these countries are fighting, why they got together and they put a treaty in Antarctica so we can't go research there. And I'm not going to get into the flat Earth, and that has a lot to do with it, but they work together on certain issues. And one is 9/11. They all believe that they are in harmony, that it was the Arab terrorists that did it, and then they pushed into their, Iraqi war. And what's really crazy, I just heard about this today in New York. They're doing a memorial. It's called the Glade Memorial, and they're christening it today. And it's for all of the first responders who have either died or are very sick from working on the rubble of 9/11 because it was toxic. And one story is of a policeman, graduated the academy in New York on 9/10, the day before 9/11. The next day, he spent 3 days cleaning up the rubble, and he's now in a wheelchair. This is just one of hundreds of people who have either died or are sick, poisoned by their own government. I said, well, what, don't they have masks? And guess what? They said on the news today, oh, they didn't have masks back then that were good enough. Oh, really? It's only like 15 years ago. Give me a break. This was a story that should tell you, don't believe a word that comes out of your government's mouth, including Trump. Oh, you can listen to him and be entertained. That's about as far as it should go. But let me tell you something. How come we don't hear much about 9/11 anymore? People forget about it. They, been lied to so many times, they don't even care. Back then, even a year or two after 9/11, boy, I'll tell you, people, 50% of New Yorkers would believe that it was an inside job. But all that has gone away, hasn't it? And now there's new reasons to be lied to and to believe them. And they give you one all the time. It goes from one to the next. And their theory on 9/11, if you ever remember, they came up with everything right after it happened. Incredibly, they had their story down pat because the cover-up had to be better organized than even the plan to bring down the towers. Then they went to Shanksville, remember the plane, and then the Pentagon. The cover-up had to be even more orchestrated and planned than the actual crimes they committed. So enough on 9/11. But anyway, it's sad that people just forget about it. But anyway, what interested me, it takes me all the way back to the foundations of our country. And I said, is this something new that they just started this in like 1945, this New World Order? No, it's been around even before we were a country. The Vatican and the Jesuits had their eye on this country. They were thinking of a way, how can we create, they're the best creators of religions and governments, different forms of government. So what they did is, let me just give you my theory, which is shared by a few people in the world. And that is that the reason that the Constitution was formed was to get one reason. Besides this new idea of liberty, freedom, and capitalism, which can make a lot of rich people out of the elite, they wanted to get the Vatican in here, and they could do it only through an amendment, in the Constitution that states freedom of religion, everybody. Because before this, the Vatican couldn't hold office, Catholics. They were not welcome here because of what they did in Europe. And the first people that came here said, no, we don't want these guys here. Because they're going to do the same thing that they did in Europe, trying to blow up parliaments, this one thing, the French Revolution, all that kind of stuff that the Vatican Jesuits were involved in. Destroying governments, people, the Inquisition was fresh. Still, people still protested as Protestants against this. And that brings me to a subject we're going to talk about one day, Martin Luther. That is a strange story, and I always wondered about him, and we'll talk about that another time. But the point is, so they created this country for that reason as well. They could get the Vatican in, and at the time this country was formed, It was only one diocese. Now look how huge they are. And so I think the proof is in how they've grown. But once they get the real reason for them, once they get their power, which they've had and they're growing, you're not going to be able to do anything but worship on Sunday with the Pope. They take over. Fascism. That is the government of choice of the Vatican. They've said it in their own words. Now, I'm going to take 2 pages out of a book called Rulers of Evil, written by Tupper Saucy, to highlight this theory. And I think through the words of their own elites and through the words of a man who knew more about the foundations of this country and the founding fathers than anybody, we'll see that it's worth investigating. It's worth putting this story onto the table. And it should tell you that if we can do it, how come these great historians or these great journalists on the left and the right don't want to touch this story? Why? Because they're hiding the truth from you. That's their goal. And replacing it with what they're doing in Washington as we speak today. Now, 33rd degree Masonic scholar Manly P. Hall, in his Gnostic Extravaganza, Secret Teachings of All Ages, an encyclopedic outline of Masonic, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian symbolical philosophy, written in 1988. That's a mouthful itself. It must be a big book if the title is about 8,000 words. He remarked that, quote, not only were many founders of the United States government Masons, but they received aid from a secret and august body existing in Europe, which helped them to establish this country for a peculiar and particular purpose known only to the initiated few. So that should give you an idea. They're telling you what they did and what they're going to do. We just don't listen. And the people that are controlling the airwaves and everything you hear and read and see, they want to cover it up. Or they're blind to it and just collect their big, huge paychecks and forget about it. But most histories of the American government skim over the Masonic presence. Americans like their history, I love this paragraph, told in high definition icons of good or evil, liberty and tyranny, heroism and treason, might and right. Everything simple. Left and right, might and right. They won't buy a heritage polluted by dark spots of mystery. Too much for them. Too much to think about. Yet the greater part of American government heritage is almost wholly mysterious. Isn't that weird? Because, it just comes to think about it. Where did we hear everybody on the, even these internet people call the Illuminati. When did this start? And this goes way, way back, even before what we're talking about here. Hundreds of years. I like to start off, to make it simple, with the formation of the Jesuit order in the 1500s. But let me tell you something. We're in about the 1700s right now, and the beginnings of this country, and that's a good place for you to start. Most histories, like I said, this is mysterious how our country was formed, but people don't like that. The man best qualified to become our country's greatest historian, somebody you don't hear about. This is weird. Go back to some of your books, when you were in college. I'm thinking of American history in high school. I don't hear of this guy. They don't talk about him. But he had complete access to primary sources in the revolutionary cause. His name was Charles Thompson, an authentic classical scholar, a discreet Protestant, steeped in Medici learning. Thompson was known as the perpetual secretary of the Continental Congress. He knew everything, folks, everything, backside of the story, inside, outside. And he inscribed minutes of every congressional session from 1774 until ratification of the Constitution in 1789. With William Barton, a Freemason, he designed the Great Seal of the United States of America. The choice of its Hegelian mottos is credited exclusively to Thompson. And why don't we hear about him much? Among the contemporaries, Charles Thompson's name was synonymous with truth. Maybe that's why. It's like truth when you talk to, when these people are alone, getting ready to go to work in Hollywood or in Washington, and they say the word truth, the mirror breaks when they're shaving or putting on their mascara. They can't stand that word. Maybe that's why he is not in a lot of the history books, or not even, maybe the word is here. He was the guy who wrote down everything. But anyway, so accurate were his minutes of the Pennsylvania's negotiations with the Delaware Indians that the Delawares called him, and they use an Indian word, the man who talks the truth. When he would take his daily reports of congressional proceedings to the streets, eager mobs would cry, "Here comes Charles Thompson, here comes the truth." Once the Constitution was ratified, Thompson retired to Harrington, his country home in Bryn Mawr. I believe that was Harrington County. He destroyed his personal papers relative to the creation of the new republic. Why would he do something like that? Why? That's an interesting fact. He destroys them? Did he destroy them? Did he hide them? Did he put them in the Vatican archives? Did he put them in some Masonic lodge? Who knows? But anyway, it's weird. But Thompson had a reason. Now, Thompson actually, is probably him on the phone right now. No, it's not Charles Thompson. Okay. Whoever it was, it's on my foreign line. Probably somebody from Rome. But anyway, where were we? Here comes Charles Thompson. Charles Thompson retired, like I said, to Bryn Mawr, destroying all his papers. I said that's questionable. An article by Kenneth Bowling in the Pennsylvania Magazine of History and Biography, this was only in 1976, says that Thompson actually wrote a lengthy history of the Revolution, which he also destroyed. Thompson's biographer, J. Edwin Hendricks of Wake Forest, suggests a fate other than destruction, alluding to, quote, persistent rumors that the Thompson papers are in the Pennsylvania Masonic records. Professor Hendricks assured this author, Tupper Saucy, personally that numerous inquiries have failed to reflect Thompson's membership in Pennsylvania Masonry. Whether Thompson destroyed his history or surrendered it to the crypt of secrecy, it is clear, very clear, that he knew where certain elements in the formation of American government that must be ignored. And he said this to one of his friends. If the truth were known, he told friends darkly, quote, many careers would be tarnished and the leadership of this beautiful nation would be weakened. And so Thompson decided, I guess, to let a lie, let sleeping dogs lie and allow the people who are just the peasants to live in illusion, which has been going on since the beginning of our country. And so Thompson occupied the remaining 40 years of his life translating the Septuagint, the Greek language Bible, into English. I got an email, because I did this story a while back. I'd like to do it a couple times to get more readers and more listeners. And somebody texted me and said they really like this translation. Still, he was frequently requested to write the definitive insider's history of the Revolution. Dr. Benjamin Rush overheard Thompson's reply to one such request and recorded it in his diary. It's never in the history books, because this will tell you something. It'll give you an idea of where to look to find out these hidden stories. And Thompson said this, no, I will not write it. I ought not, for I should contradict all the histories of the great events of the Revolution. So what does that tell you, folks? The revisionist history exists even back then, right? Yeah. And should my account of men, motives, and measures, that we are wholly indebted, now listen to these words, to the agency of Providence for its successful issue. So he's saying, for this country's success, because we won the revolution, for all this, we owe it to the agency of Providence. Not just the founding fathers who were working for the agency of Providence. Let the word admire the supposed wisdom and valor of our great men. See what he's saying? Let them admire this. Perhaps they may adopt the qualities that have been ascribed. He's hoping maybe someday these will wear off on the leaders in the future and the world will be great. No. All these leaders come from the same, from the same bloodlines. The elites. They have no good. This country was formed for a secret reason, like Manly P. Hall said, and it still is. And we're telling you what it is. Perhaps they may adopt these qualities. I shall not undeceive future generations. And what Tupper Saucy believes Thompson was meaning to say is simply that no historical account of the American Revolution can be truthful unless it discloses the role played by, quote, the agency of Providence, unquote. Notice that Thompson does not use just the word Providence alone, which was understood in his day to mean God or Christ. He does not say we are wholly indebted to God or we are wholly indebted to Christ, but rather to the agency thereof. If Thompson knew the word agency was a synonym for the vicar, and I can't imagine that a professional linguist wouldn't know that if he knew that the popes had been called vicar of Christ since the 5th century, and I can't imagine that the biblical scholar of his quality wouldn't then, Thompson was most likely saying, we are wholly indebted to the vicar of Christ, that is the Roman papacy, for the formation of this country. What a ridiculous statement in the post-revolutionary mindset. Who would have believed such an outrageous notion coming from even the man who talks the truth? Guess what? They wouldn't have believed it then, and they don't believe it now, people. People don't believe it when you tell them that Rome controls what's happening here in Washington and in Russia and in China. And like one of the Jesuit generals once said, his name was Tamburini, as I sit here on Borgo Santo Spirito Cinque, and that's in Rome, we control the world in China, in the Americas, in South America, and all over, without anybody knowing how we do it. They tell you who they are. Now today, just like in Thompson, if Thompson would have came out with this, boy, he would have backstabbed a lot of his friends. They must have trusted him, and he, was cryptic in at least telling us this, the agency of Providence. And it gives you a good starting point to believe the premise I say here. The Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order is alive and exists today as it was back then. And they had a huge hand in organizing the French against the British and all of the little details that are left out of the history books about the real reasons for this country. But what a ridiculous statement, even back then, right? The embattled, degenerate, dying papacy could not possibly have affected the revolution. I heard that from Alex Jones 10 or 15 years ago when I was trumpeting this message and he was calling me crazy. He said, how could the poor papacy be involved in this? They're crazy, whoever says that. Now he says, the Jesuit Pope is Lucifer or something, and he said, they're the bad guys, but there are good guys in the Vatican. There are no good guys at the top level. Let's get it through Alex's head, because Alex also works for them. Okay. The embattled, degenerate, dying papacy, and anyone foolish enough to run with the idea would have crashed headlong into a wall of ridicule. Hey, we crashed headlong into a wall of ridicule back then from all these people, even on the alternative media, at Genesis Broadcasting, at RBN. They didn't want this message every day because they knew they had to cover it. And they're doing a damn good job of it. So, that gives you another starting point. Guess what? Tomorrow's Friday, and on Friday, we're going to go into Gamameel's interview with Joseph and Mary and others concerning Jesus. Very interesting, because we're looking at things today and tomorrow that need to be looked at without listening to the stories you've heard over and over again, either on the pulpit or on TV or from your government. And we've went through a couple of them. Now we're going to go way back because it always interested me who Jesus really was. What was he like? Wasn't there a personal side to this guy? Did he like cooking? Did he like to joke around with people? Did he have occasional whiskey or glass of wine? Who was he? And I think, there's a lot to this story that we don't know. And I don't think it's bad to ask yourself that question and to look to places that have talked about it. And so there are a couple of books I know. One is called the Arco volume, and another is this J.J. Benitez, who's talked about this in his books. He's a Spanish writer. And why don't we look at that tomorrow? Without hesitation, without, Christians getting upset, without atheists going, oh, he was just this guy that walked around hallucinating. No, I'm going to take a good look at what possibly has been left out. And even according to a priest I talked to in Rome when I lived there, who told me, boy, if the people knew the truth, they couldn't handle it. That's why we keep it locked up in the Vatican archives. I said, my God, can I go down there? Come on, I can take it. Oh, no. No. You have to be of that. He didn't say it this way, but you got to be one of those initiated few. Oh, boy. Let's talk about that tomorrow, okay? Sleep on it. Have a good evening. Glad you joined us. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.